Hello, Chris Orrick here, Head of Inclusion from Asian Business Connections. And in this video, we're going to consider what it means to be an inclusive employer. So, inclusion is difficult to define. Everybody talks about diversity and everybody talks about equality, but not many people talk about inclusion. It's an up-and-coming agenda in the HR world, but a lot of people find it difficult to implement because they don't really understand what it is. So this video is meant to give you some idea as to what we feel inclusion is and how it applies to you as an employer. So for us, being an inclusive employer means having an environment where everybody is treated with dignity and respect, where the talents and the skills of the different groups are valued, and where productivity and customer service improves because the workforce is happier. So really what we're saying here is an environment where your staff are happier is much more productive and a much happier place for people to work. And as a result, customer service tends to go up, productivity tends to go up, staff retention tends to go up. So it's just a wonderful thing to try to get right. So how do we become an inclusive employer? I'm going to try and give you some ideas around how some organisations we work with do this. It's all about trying to create a welcoming workplace culture. So in order to do this, perhaps an idea might be to complete a survey. Now, surveying staff is quite a challenging thing to do. It has to be thought out and it has to be legal. So when I say legal, what I mean is you have to ask the right questions of your staff team. Asking questions just for asking's sake is not good enough. We have to ask them for a particular reason. And the reason we're interested in this is to find out how welcoming each of your staff feel in the work environment. Did they feel included? Did they not feel included? Why did they not feel included? Or why do they feel included? What activities are you doing that makes you an amazing, inclusive employer? The next part is around policies. So employers really ought to have policies in place around human rights, working conditions, employee welfare, and fair recruitment policies. That's quite a lot of policies to have around inclusion. So why don't we start by looking at recruitment policies? And why don't we start by looking to check to see if we're doing our recruitment adverts so that we're not excluding any part of the community. For example, if we are looking for a project manager, using the word experienced might put off a younger project manager because he or she may not feel that they have the experience required by the advert. Asking for really long hours might put off working parents, for example. Asking for dynamic team members might put off older people, for example. So the use of language in our recruitment policies is really important. And further, why don't we try recruiting people on the skills and experience that they have rather than their background or age or gender? So using a blind kind of recruitment policy procedure might work really well for your organization, and it might attract even better people than you ever thought you could attract, because 67% of people are interested in inclusion and feeling included in their workplace. It is really important for people. So why not try this and see where you get? So the next thing I want to look at is, do your staff at all levels understand and are aware of your inclusive values? This comes down to communication and how you communicate with the team in the organization. Some organizations we work with have developed groups of individuals. So for example, gender groups or sexuality groups or faith groups. And these are groups that feel protected and groups where people can talk about the challenges, the issues that they're having within those groups of people. So why don't you encourage, perhaps, people who have protected characters to join a group, create a group, be part of a group, and support that group authentically. And don't just do it because actually it's something that you can tick a box off. When you communicate externally, you could potentially talk about the groups or the activities or the work that you're doing around inclusion and how this impacts on your organisation. And don't forget, using the survey that we talked about earlier, this is a great way to see if the difference is being made by the interventions that you're doing. So talk with your staff, talk with HR, talk with all of your workforce, implement some activities, implement some groups, and see where we get. We would love to hear how this goes, so don't forget to email us at inclusion@abconnections.org with some wonderful stories of what went well and what didn't go so well. We'd love to give you a call and have a chat about that. So the next section I want to talk about is the workforce representative of your local community or customers? And by this, we're looking for you to encourage underrepresented groups to apply for roles within your organisations. Look, it's really simple, okay? I don't understand what it's like to be female. So I struggle sometimes to understand how females react, think. Equally, I am not disabled, nor Asian, nor Chinese, and so I would potentially struggle to understand how things occur from that viewpoint. Having Asians, having disabled people, having female, having a rich blend of staff and workforce really does give you an optimum output with your product or service. If your workforce is representative of your customers or of your community, you will invariably get a much better outcome from your organisation. And the last thing we wanted to talk about was all employees are encouraged to progress and develop. So this is about developing your staff, and in doing so perhaps developing plans for their progression. So we know that a more inclusive environment, a more inclusive workplace increases staff retention. But what you do with the staff that you retain is really important, and you need to work quite hard to continue that retention. So giving them clear development plans is something really important, and try to use their background, protected characteristic, whatever you want to call it, build it into their development plan and see how it can benefit them and the organisation. So we hope that this video has given you a few hints and tips. There'll be lots more on the way. Thank you so much for listening. Chris.